My name is Ed Cashman. I'm a standard plans engineer with the standard plans section, and I will be discussing some of the standard plans that I have updated in this cycle. Now, as a disclaimer, this is just covering the significant changes, and for the totality of the revisions, you're going to want to see the revision log. So starting with index 102-100, this was previously index 415. It is now called temporary barrier. This index is generic to multiple types of temporary barrier systems. Previously, this covered primarily concrete, but with the changes that we have now made, this index is covering concrete barrier, steel barrier, and water-filled barrier. Now, the primary differentiation between these barriers is whether they are freestanding or anchored. The other major change in this index is that deflection space is now setback distance. The table has been updated, it's simplified. It was previously very cumbersome. And when you look here, you'll see that anchored and freestanding are now the two conditions for how to choose the setback distance, the lateral offset. Now, in the previous version of the standard design standards, the minimum setback distance with the type K anchored was 1 foot. It is now 2 feet. And this is primarily because as a result of MASH, the setback distance was actually higher than that 1 foot, and we consider the 2 foot to be a reasonable update. Now, 102-100 previously had a couple of sheets dedicated to the length of need calculations. Those have been removed, and you are going to want to see the standard plan instructions for length of need. Crash cushion details have been moved from here into 102-110, and see the APL for any proprietary barriers and their requirements for how to connect to crash cushions. Moving on to 102-110, this was previously index 414. This is type K temporary concrete barrier. There are a considerable number of revisions that occurred in this index, but most of them are fairly minor, and they're for clarity with the new temporary barrier, the changes that we made into the 102-100. As part of that effort, some of the information that was previously shown, like the setback distance, that's now just a reference to 102-100. The fabrication details that were on sheets 1 through 3 of 15 are now shown on sheets 15 through 17 of 17. Probably the most significant change here is that the 3321 anchorage transition detail has been added on sheet 1, and that's shown here below. Index 102-600, we revised the preference to general notes, and the information contained therein was revised. So you can see here we have the preface with the manual on the uniform traffic control devices, and that has been simplified. The temporary substitution of RPMs for paint or removable tape detail has been removed from sheet 12 of 12. That's because this according to the MUTCD, there was supposed to be an engineering study involved in the placement of this. It's typically not supposed to be used on the outside lane lines. So we don't really want this to be a frontline option, and we're not saying that it's not allowed, but it needs more thought if it's going to be used. Index 102-606. This was previously Index 606. Two-lane, two-way, work within the travelway, signal control. The general notes have been revised, and we added another option for having a half-mile closure. So you can see here what notes have been eliminated. And this is what the general notes look like now. The reverse curve and keep right signs have been removed from all sheets. These signs are not necessary according to the MUTCD, and we do not use similar signs in 102-603, which is the two-lane, two-way, work within the travelway flagger control. Index 102-660, previously Index 660, pedestrian control for the closure of sidewalks. The general notes have been revised, with probably the most significant one being Note 6, which has been removed. And this type of information should be included in the TCP, and we don't want something in the TCP to overwrite necessarily what's in the standard plan. So it made sense just to remove that conflict. Now the sidewalk diversion has been revised. This previously showed a diversion into the travelway, but this isn't typically feasible, and a more realistic option is that a temporary sidewalk or walkway would be placed within the TCP. Index 546-010, previously Index 518. This is ground-in rumble strips. The half plan that was showing the shoulder ground-in rumble strip placement has been removed and placed into FDM 211.4.4. This is something that should be detailed into the roadway plans. It's not something that should just be relying simply on the standard plan. And this also corresponds to what we're going to be doing with the ground-in rumble strips on arterials and collectors. For the time being, the details are also described in the general notes of this index. Additionally, the concrete pavement details that were on sheet 2 of 2 have been removed. The rigid pavement with the flexible pavement shoulder detail has been incorporated into detail A of the standard plans as a note, and the profiled thermoplastic criteria has been moved into FDM 211.4.4.2. As with the typical placement of the rumble strips, this is something that should be detailed in the plans for the profile thermoplastic. So, and there's no real additional criteria as far as how to place them. It's more or less if you're going to use it in lieu of rumble strips. So this sheet was eliminated, and this is showing what's in detail A of the standard plan. and this 24-inch for the rigid pavement with flexible pavement shoulder covers what was previously shown on sheet 2 of 2. Index 665-001, previously Index 17784, pedestrian detector assembly installation details. The entire index has been reconfigured, revised, but in general, the content is the same. Now, sheet 2 of 2 has been removed. This was showing some sign details, push button location details. For the sign details, that's covered by the MUTCD, and these sign details shown in the standard plans were just a duplication of that. It would be preferable that if you're going to use the signs, please see the MUTCD. The location details at the bottom left aren't necessarily what we're looking for as far as the placement of these push buttons. For that, I would say to see the MUTCD as well. Index 700-010, previously Index 11860, single column ground signs. The concrete stub detail has been removed and the driven post detail has been revised. These are both on sheet 5 of 9. And this is showing the new driven post detail in the standard plan. You can see that the soil plate has a different configuration from what existed previously. And this is due to maintenance issues. The concrete stub was having problems with the concrete cracking. The driven post, this is easier to insert into the soil if you're trying to replace an existing driven post. Index 700-020, multi-column ground sign. We deleted the 8-foot requirement off of the detail on sheet 1 of 3. And this is because there is now an additional 7-foot requirement for the length of the post from the base connection to the bottom of the sign panel. What has been occurring previously is that some of those posts were getting very short, especially on significant back slopes or foreslopes, and that was impacting the ability of the sign to actually break away. So this is something to keep in mind when you're designing your multi-column ground signs, just to ensure that those posts are at least 7 feet from the base connection to the sign panel. Index 700-101, previously Index 17302. Typical sections for placement of single and multi-column ground signs. There are index-wide changes for consistency, but most of these changes are fairly minor. The wrong way sign criteria was pulled out of the case 2 detail, and a specific detail has been created for these wrong way signs as case 10. So this is showing the previous case 2, where the wrong way sign was just an asterisk of the typical sign placement on rural roads and actually strictly on expressway ramps in this case. So the new detail is just showing the specific use of the wrong way signs. This was the old design standard was in some occasions causing some confusion. Index 706-001, previously Index 17352, typical placement of raised pavement markers. Once again, there are index-wide changes, but most of these are relatively minor. 2 new sheets have been created for optional RPM details at median openings, islands, and traffic separators. If these details are used, they should be called for in the plans. And this is detailed in the standard plans instructions as well as far as how to call these out. This is showing the new optional RPM details for RPM placement at median openings. And this is the RPM placement at islands and traffic separators. Index 711-001, previously Index 17346, pavement markings. There are index-wide changes for consistency, but again, most of these are relatively minor. 2 new sheets have been added to clearly show longitudinal markings. So this is showing how to place the lines longitudinally, what the distance is from the edge, how they relate to joint lines. And this section sheet here is showing for buffered bike lanes and also additionally the express lane striping. Some details have been removed from this index. These include typical crosswalk markings for curb ramps on the old sheet 6 of 17. This is a duplication of what is shown in the curb ramp standard plan. The restricted left turn lane marking on sheet 7 of 17, the old sheet 7 of 17, has been removed as well. These are not necessarily reflecting our current practice for how we design roadways, and there is very limited information as far as how these are different from what we typically do. That is true for this typical intersection 2 through lanes plus left turn lane with crosswalk. That has been moved as well. The stop bars, crosswalks, and double center line details on the old sheet 7 of 17 has been consolidated. Now this is more or less a duplication of what was shown previously, so it has been removed. The one-way signs on divided highway intersections detail has been removed and placed in FDM 230 as an exhibit. This is because these signs should be included in the signing and pavement marking plans. This is primarily designer information. The contractor will understand how to place these signs from the signing and pavement marking plans. This is the same case with the mid-block crossing details that were on the old sheet 13 of 17. This has also been placed in the FDM 230 as an exhibit. The signing details for schemes for transition 2-lane to 4-lane roadway on the old sheet 9 of 17 have been removed from that detail and placed in FDM 230 as an exhibit. Similarly to the previous details, these signs should be included in the signing and pavement marking plans, and it's not necessary to show them here. This is just designer information. The sheet with the exit number details, the old sheet 10 of 17, has been removed and placed into Index 711-003, the Interchange Markings Index. And that is because these details are only relevant to those interchange markings anyways. Now, the minimum parking restrictions for non-signalized and signalized intersections on the old sheet 15 of 17 have been removed. Those are now covered by FDM 212.11.5, and that's a section for on-street parking at intersections. This is primarily designer information. Two sheets with profile thermoplastic details, the old sheets 16 and 17 of 17, have been removed. And this is part of the effort to combine with rumble strips as far as how to place these audible and vibratory treatments. See FDM figure 210.4.4 for the criteria on where to place these audible and vibratory treatments. A new sheet has been added, with the markings for school zone details. This is now sheet 14. Index 711-002, previously index 17347, bicycle markings. The sheet with the shared lane markings details, previously sheet 2 of 5, has been removed. See the FDM 223.3 for guidance on the shared lane markings. Additionally, the sheets dealing with the bike lane typical layouts, previously sheets 4 and 5, have been removed, and those are now exhibits in FDM 223. This is similarly to the signing details. This is designer information, and the plans should be detailing how to place these pavement markings. Index 711-003, previously index 17345, interchange markings. There are index-wide changes for consistency, but most of these changes are relatively minor. One of the more significant changes is that the chevron spacing chart on sheet 1 of 1 has been revised. All chevron spacing is now 60 feet. A new sheet has been added with an interchange intersection. This is now sheet 6 of 7. This is showing, in addition to some of the other pavement markings, how to place the wrong way arrows at intersections of interchanges. The wrong way arrows should not be placed in between consecutive directional arrows. The sheet with the exit number details is now sheet 7 of 7 in the interchange markings. This is more or less intact from the pavement markings index. And that is the end. If you have any questions, my contact information is here on the screen.